Good morning, everyone. Right now, this is the video on Gifted and Talented, Chapter 13. If you'll look at the beginning of my notes, if you haven't pulled them up, go ahead and pull up my notes for Chapter 13. You'll see the first slide has your homework for the week. And then we'll go on to Chapter 13's slides there. When you get done with Chapter 13, you'll be able to explain how the dynamic and evolving definition of giftedness has changed how students are identified and served. You'll be able to describe the characteristics of gifted and talented students and explain why they need special education and identify the estimated prevalence of gifted students. You'll be able to see and understand the state guidelines for effectively and fairly identifying gifted students from racially, culturally, and economically different groups. Compare and contrast project-based learning, problem-based learning, and inquiry-based learning. And then describe the relative benefits of various placement options for gifted students. One of the first things is I want you to give just your idea. Some of you may not have read the book, some of you may have scanned it. What's your idea? Why do students who are very bright need special education services? Think about that and pause the video, and then when you get done, write it down. We'll talk about it. Well, why? Special education is necessary for children when their physical attributes and or learning abilities differ from the norm to such an extent that an individualized program of special education is required to meet their needs. Just as the traditional curriculum is often inappropriate for the child with a disability, it also can be inappropriate for the child who is gifted and talented. The traditional curriculum may not provide the kinds of challenges the gifted student requires to learn most effectively. When a traditional classroom curriculum is not allowing children who are gifted and talented to fulfill their potential and to succeed fully in school, then special education is needed. Let's go to the definitions. Compared to children of their own age, the child, number one, exhibits high achievement capability in areas of intellectual, creative, leadership, or artistic capacity. Also excels in specific academic field. Also needs services and activities not ordinarily provided by the school to fully develop those capabilities. Also, National Association for Gifted Children, individuals who demonstrate outstanding levels of aptitude or competence in one or more domains is another definition. Other contemporary definition, there is the Renzulli's three-trait definition, where above average general intelligence, intellectual abilities, high-level task commitment, and creativity. And then there's Pierto's concept of talent development, Maker's problem-solving perspective, which includes high intelligence, advanced creativity, and excellent problem-solving skills. And state-by-state definitions may vary. General intelligence prevails across the state. Other aspects of special abilities may be added depending on the state. Rapid characteristics: rapidly acquire, retain, and use large amounts of information. Relate one idea to another. They make sound judgments and appreciate multiple and opposing points of view are the general characteristics. I'd like for you to watch the next two videos to give you an idea. One area of this chapter on gifted and talented includes savants. And so please go ahead and pause this video and go ahead and watch the first one, Daniel Tammet, autistic savant, and then the Rain Man twins, Flo and Kay. So go ahead and pause me and go ahead and watch those videos. Well, I hope after watching those videos you have a better perspective of savant and some of the changes that might happen. I'm always amazed at what they come up with and what they can do. More characteristics: perceive the operation of larger systems of knowledge not often recognized by the typical person. Acquire or manipulate abstract symbol systems. solve problems by reframing the question and creating novel solutions, and also precociousness, showing highly advanced abilities and skills at a young age, highly developed sense of moral judgment, fair play, compassion, and empathy. Creativity. They have some dimensions of creativity that the book discusses. Their fluency, flexibility, novelty, originality, elaboration, synthesizing ability, and analyzing ability, ability to reorganize and redefine existing ideas, and complexity. Precocity and individual differences. Display creativeness, talents, or intellectual abilities that are highly advanced for their age. And dimensions of individual differences can involve three different areas: inter-individual differences, intra-individual differences, and asynchrony. So as you read through the book, get a good idea of what the differences are of those there. The prevalence of gifted and talented children comprise about 3 to 5% of the student population, according to the federal reports. Percent varies widely from state to state. Identification and assessment. Comprehensive and equitable assessment include group and individual IQ tests, achievement, proficiency, and state tests, portfolios of the student work, teacher, parent, family, caregiver, self, and peer nominations, and extracurricular or leisure activities are some of the areas there. There's also multicultural assessment and identification discussed in the book. It talks about the underrepresentation of African American, Hispanic, and Native American students in that gifted population. Education program is persistent and pervasive problem. Low rates of referrals because of educators' low expectations and the use of culturally biased tests and instruments that are primarily to blame. Let's see here. Talks about the multicultural assessment identification, talks about 10 core attributes of giftedness across social, economic, ethnic, and racial groups, and talks about communication skills, imagination, creativity, humor, inquiry, insight, interest, memory, also motivation, problem solving, and also reasoning are also listed as 10 core attributes. Some of the criteria: identify with a goal of inclusion rather than exclusion, gather data from multiple sources, use a combination of formal and informal testing techniques, begin identification procedures as early as possible. Some multicultural assessment identification criteria: use unconventional or non-traditional measures involving arts and aesthetic expression. Use information gathered during the identification process to help determine the curriculum, programs, and services. And in the absence of high-quality, cultural responsive instruction, culturally and racially diverse gifted and talented students may distance themselves from the gifted label and be hesitant to enter and unwilling to stay in a gifted education program. Talks about some of the differences: gifted and talented girls, conflicts concerning role definition, poor self-concept, poor academic choices, or lack of support. When it talks about gifted and talented boys, you have negative stereotyping for boys with talents in the arts. And then gifted and talented students with disabilities. Think about this too. Gifts and talents could be masked by their disability. Just because they're disabled in an area does not mean that you can do that, or that that they can't be gifted and talented. So just because they have a disability, they can be twice exceptional and need a duly differentiated instruction. I have another question for you. How can the general education classroom teacher provide instruction at the pace and depth needed by gifted and talented students while meeting the needs of other students in the classroom? So go ahead and pause the video and put down some ideas that you're thinking about. Why? How could the general education classroom teacher provide instruction at the pace and depth needed to those students? Three common approaches for teaching gifted and talented students are enrichment, curriculum compacting, and acceleration. And you really need to think about these and read them in the book a little bit more too. Enrichment experiences allow students to investigate topics of interest. Curriculum compacting is compressing instructional content so students have more time to work on challenging materials. Acceleration allows the student to move through the curriculum faster. However, each of these approaches can be used by the regular education classroom teacher. Although ability grouping has been an issue of considerable debate, it is the one strategy that might enable regular classroom teachers to appropriately differentiate instruction. Grouping enables gifted students to be appropriately challenged through more rapid and advanced instruction. Allowing gifted students to be grouped so that they can progress at their own pace may preserve the student's motivation to learn and also help prevent problems such as boredom and an aversion towards school. Talks about educational approaches. The overall educational goal for gifted and talented students is the fullest possible development of every child's demonstrated and potential abilities. Academically rigorous and increased relevance and depth of curriculum. Also talks about thematic and interdisciplinary, include the structures, terminologies, and methodologies of various disciplines, and also responsive to and respectful of gifted students' learning characteristics, such as matching the student's unique needs with others. Educational approaches, curriculum differentiation. There's tailoring teaching environments, there's curricula and instructional practices to create appropriately different learning experience for students with different needs, maybe different interests, different readiness, and different learning profiles. Let's see here. Some of the educational approaches we discussed earlier, but again, I want to make sure you understand the difference. Acceleration, methods for increasing the speed which a student progresses through school. There's curriculum compacting, which is assessing students' knowledge and skills in the target content areas, determine the content to be eliminated, and then substitute more appropriate content. There's enrichment, enables students to probe or study specific subject matter, a topic of interest, or a discipline at greater detail and depth, accomplish process and content-related goals, and school-wide enrichment model were talked about in that area. There's accelerate or enrich, depending on the subject matter and the student. There's also differentiated instruction in the classroom that's talked about. You'll want to look at Bloom's taxonomy, tiered lessons, inquiry-based learning, problem-based learning, and also project-based learning. You'll need to know the differences of those for the upcoming quiz. Also, teaching leadership skills is a good educational approach. There's also differentiating outside the classroom. You've got internship and mentor programs. You got specialized courses, junior great books, summer programs, and also international experiences that are educational approaches. Placement options, you have that ability grouping as we discussed a little bit earlier. There's special schools and special classrooms. There's been special charter schools for gifted and talented students have been established in some states. Cluster ability grouping, the top 5 to 8 highest performing students at a given grade level learn together in a general education classroom of mixed ability students. There's also resource room or pull-out programs, cluster performance grouping, likability, cooperative learning group, and a consulting teacher model. You'll want to look at those different placement options and be able to understand the differences of those placement options. Should gifted students be educated with their same age peers or with older students who share the same intellectual and academic talents and interests? I'd like for you to go ahead and pause the video and write down your comments. What do you think? Should those gifted students be educated with their same age peers or older students who share the same intellectual and academic talents and interests? Well, here's some ideas from the text. Because gifted students learn at a faster rate than most students, they benefit from differentiated curriculum that can include enrichment and acceleration. With enrichment, differentiated curriculum that can include enrichment, acceleration. With enrichment, there we go. A gifted child can stay in a class with the same grade age peers, but study a topic at greater depth. With acceleration, students move more quickly through the curriculum. Grade skipping is one form of acceleration. One commonly heard concern is that grade skipping will lead to social or emotional problems because of the child will be in a classroom with students who are more advanced physically and emotionally. School personnel and parents are usually concerned that talented students will suffer from the pressure to achieve or will become emotional misfits. However, longitudinal research found no evidence that accelerating harms willing students academically or socially. But I think the key term here is willingly. Also, I think an idea to look at is to make sure that the parents, the student, and the administration, the teachers are aware of the concerns emotionally. I know that I've had a couple students that I knew of that went through and did the grade skipping, but when they got up to middle school, as they were going through the different changes, and especially gym, seemed to be a major concern emotionally to the student going through that. And then getting to the high school, even more, of a developmentally, as far as physically, different than their peers, caused some issues with dressing out and following. Most schools have a PE requirement and they normally get it done that freshman year. So, I do think that's something to look at, but according to research, there really hasn't been any evidence that accelerating will harm those students overall. I guess right now, if you're in the 15, 16-week full course, you should, if you're going through the placement office for your placement, I would say the next couple weeks, you will be getting an email from the office. And then at that point, please make sure that you put your information, the teachers, and where you'll be observing, items like that, into the discussion board prompt for that. And then go ahead and get started. All of you by now should have had an ample opportunity to meet with me about your observation. I'm meeting with the last students currently this week, so hopefully you took advantage of that time to meet with me. I've given basically almost half the semester to get in, so if you haven't, just make sure that you look over the rubric and take care of business on that side. Other than that, this is going to be a shorter video, so I'll let you go.